What is up, you guys? It is Jake State Farm here with Atomic Theory, back with day 7 of our Road to 2500 series. Now, this is the series where we're competing against Reachester to see who can hit 2500 first. And today is the closest it has been so far. I guess I'll go ahead and give you guys an update. It's going to be a little bit of a different video today. It's been an up and down day for me. Finished with a rating of 2449. It says I've only played 10 games today, but that is just because the time that Lichess says a new day has started is different for the day me. So it's at the end of the day for me right now. And so I think I've played roughly 42 games. I don't know if all of these I actually played today for me, but regardless, ended at 2449. So I've gone down a little bit today. Meanwhile, Reachester is up to 2420. So as you can see, if we look at the world rankings here, we are both in the top 10. We're actually both top 6 in the world currently. So the race is certainly heating up. I knew that Reachester would be able to turn it on if he just decided to lock in a little bit and take every game seriously. So yeah, certainly a good battle here. And I did record a little bit today, but I didn't have any commentary on it. It was some 1+0 games against some lower rated players. So I thought what I could do instead is I had bookmarked this game from yesterday when I was playing in the monthly Atomic Theory Arena. And I don't remember why I bookmarked it. I just know that I thought that it was a good, instructive game. So my thought for today was that I haven't looked at it yet. I was thinking I'll go over it with you guys and I'll give my thoughts on the game, how I played, how my opponent played, what we could maybe do better. And then we'll quickly run a computer analysis on it. I'll go over it again and we'll see what I can learn from my analysis on the game. So yeah, I thought that'd be maybe more instructive than going. I didn't think there would be a whole lot of value in looking of and you guys watching some 1+0 games against low rated players where there's no commentary from my side. So yeah, instead we're just going to hop right into this. So this was against Be Afraid of Your Desire, who I'm not entirely sure who it is. I messaged him asking who it is. Looks like he joined 2 years ago, so a pretty old account, but not too many games on it, despite the age of it. So this must be an alt account for someone, but I'm not really sure who it is. But regardless, pretty strong player, opening with pawn to d4. And so I like to go for knight h6. I guess we can look at my database here so you guys can see. Knight h6 is the main move I play. Recently, I've been playing this move e6, which as you can see, I don't score too well with it. And actually, my performance rating with it is pretty low as well, to be honest. But knight h6, I just haven't. Yeah, there's this line f3, d5, and a lot of people are playing something like a knight c3, b5, and something like knight e4, which maybe I don't score too poorly in this. But also, this is a 2100 here. He's been beating me in this consistently. Actually, all 3 of these games were 2100s that beat me. So, I've been looking for new lines. If you guys have any suggestions against d4, e6 I feel like works pretty well in hyper, although I guess the stats are saying that it's just maybe not that great for me to play. So maybe I should stop playing e6, although I feel pretty good in the positions that I get in this sometimes after knight c6. Yeah, especially if they play 95. I have a 2574 performance rating there. But I guess if they play anything else. So, I don't know. Still looking at new stuff to play here. But regardless, knight h6 and after pawn to h3, I elect to go for e6 this time. So, it's always good to switch it up if you think there's a possibility that your opponent has threat for you. So I went for e6 with the simple threat of queen h4, queen e4. So I'm guessing the computer will say this is objectively a mistake, but it is what it is. Okay, pawn to e4, and then I continue with knight to a6, b4. This is all pretty standard stuff, I think. Again, the computer might say some of this is mistakes, but I think this is all pretty standard stuff. And okay, let's go ahead and assess this position here at this time. So what am I playing for as black here? We can turn this off now. What am I playing for as black? Well, I want to get in something like rook b8, knight c5 here is my goal. I'll be honest, I have no idea how how the game continued. Um, but how I like to play these positions oftentimes, if the pawn is on e4, now I think pawn to e5 is a fine move, but after he plays pawn to e5, what he's doing for himself is potentially opening up something here. So, if I ever look to play g5 especially, then he could come in behind, really clamping down space. Also, something like f5 could be really strong. Um, Although this h-pawn is doing pretty nice, putting pressure here right now. So no knight f3, queen f3 stuff right now, but um, something like f5, maybe even queen e2, and if he's ever able to get his rook here, he's the one that's kind of threatening to open this up. And with f5 here, it's really hard for me to develop my pieces at all on the king side, right? Bishop h6, not really possible because there's f takes g6 there. No queen e7, bishop d7, bishop g7, any of this, he can always just take these pawns here. So that's why I like this move e5. It really can clamp down on my position. And if I ever try to take here, yeah, probably it's just something like queen e2. And it's not great. I mean, maybe in this position it's best to take. But yeah, especially after pawn to f5, if I ever take one of them, at the very least, he can push the other one and get an infiltrated pawn, which could be pretty dangerous. Another thing that f5 would do in the future is potentially open this up if I ever try to get this bishop out and castle kingside. So after I see a move like e5, I know my plan needs to be knight to c5, or rook b8, sorry, followed by knight to c5, and generating some counterplay. Because if b takes, I can roll this b pawn down, and if d takes, I can roll the d pawn down, and that's essentially a strategy. And when you already have this rook on b8, it's really nice because let's say I went knight c5 takes b5, he could probably play something like a4. And I mean, okay, I could probably still advance with b4, but it's nice to have this rook here because then there's no way that he can ever capture this pawn. My rook will just be coming down this wide open b file. And yeah, it's really nice to have this support of the rook here when you're pushing down the b pawn here. So again, according to the computer, I don't know for sure that rook b8, knight c5 is the right plan in this situation. There may be some computer line here that works better. But in these types of positions, when it's not like knight f3, e3, or two knights spam, when it's this is what I would call like more positional atomic chess, where you often get these similar types of positions, right? He opened with d4, and I ended up playing knight h6 followed by h3, but like this position could also arise if he started with knight h3 and then played d4, e4. It would look slightly different, obviously, because I would have probably been the one to have played h6. It would look a little different, but in general, you would get this similar type position where the middle ends up getting somewhat locked up, maybe, and generally white will have an advantage on the king side, and there's different ways to play. I've seen people where they move this bishop and play king f8. Sometimes there's different ways to play here, but in general, one of my main strategies is to try to find some kind of counterplay on the queen side, and one of the main ways you can do this is rook b8 followed by knight to c5. Again, with the pawn on e4, say he had started with f5, then I would probably have a different plan. Maybe I would have played e5 then to kind of stop this e pawn from coming in. But suppose I'd gone for rook b8. After knight c5, he would simply just have e captures. I don't have any queen d5 because then the f pawn just captures here. So, yeah, in this particular position after pawn to f5, I probably would have played something like e5. I'm trying to think what else would maybe playable. I mean, maybe d takes e4 here. But I probably wouldn't have gone for this setup of rook b8, knight c5. It just doesn't make too sense if he's keeping his e pawn here, attacking my d pawn. So, okay, I already know because I saw in the notation here that after e5, I played this move pawn to f5, which I really like. It's a good move, basically stopping him from playing f5, stopping any ideas of this, but also coming with a tempo because he's already pushed the pawn to g4. He has to respond to this threat. If the pawn were on g2, that's good for multiple reasons. A, the queen is hitting h5 in this particular position, but also if I ever go queen h4, he could just play pawn to g3. But in this case, f5 comes with the tempo, so he's got to stop it with g5. And okay, I figured I would. I end up going for this plan here, rook to b8 and knight to c5. And okay, he ends up taking with the d pawn. Generally here, you almost always see the b pawn being the one that captures, and then again, I would play pawn to b5. Who's trying to play against me? Oh, casual. Then if pawn to a4, I'd probably just continue rolling this b pawn down the board. And I mean, yeah, we could get to a position like this, and you know, I would be totally happy here with my counterplay. I'd probably continue with bishop to a6, and I don't think he would want to take here because then I have maybe something like queen a5, queen a6 plans, which could be pretty dangerous for him. But in general, actually in this position, the king side is locked up, and I'm actually the one with quite a bit of play on the queen side over here. So he'd probably play bishop to b5 here, and then I'd consider, do I want to take? Do I want to go bishop b4, putting pressure on this c pawn maybe? We could even see a move like knight f1 here because it's one of these rare positions where it's so locked up. Normally you would never want to do this in Atomic, but in this position I actually think maybe knight f1 would be the move. And then I'm not really sure how I would continue here. It seems like maybe freeing this up for some c5 ideas would be one plan, but I also might be a little hesitant to do this because there's maybe knight g3, say c5 takes trying to get some counterplay here without the queen or the bishop. And okay, eventually he could maybe finagle the queen in here like this. So I'd be maybe a bit hesitant to castle, but I do want to get maybe king f8. Just because the reason I think I prefer king f8 here is because it stops any threats of this knight coming here, but it keeps this rook able to come over here if it needs to with rook h7. Though I will say maybe it's not great because if we go for the same thing of c5, maybe he can take here this time, and after takes f5, and when I had castled, this didn't make any sense because my rook would be on this open file after I capture here. But in this position now, he's kind of threatening rook f1, and it's really hard for me to deal with this. I can't push these pawns past it because they're blocked. So we'd continue with something like bishop to c5, knight to d4. And I think he's better here, so maybe castling is the right move, but this is all hypothetical, of course. That's just one position. Maybe it's something we can look at with the computer afterwards. But regardless, we see d takes instead of b takes, so allowing me to have the center, and that's probably the move that I would have played. Yeah, pawn to d4. And okay, just so that you guys know I'm not looking at this, I should probably hide this. Okay, here we go. Okay. Here, I think if I were him, I mean, you obviously want to get this bishop out. I mean, bishop d3 is probably the obvious move. Okay, he goes for it. Bishop d3 because he wants to castle, but also needs to block this pawn off. So bishop d3 makes a lot of sense. Oh boy, not mean to do that. Little spoiler there of where this position is going. I didn't get a good look at it. Okay. And yeah, once again, I'm pretty happy. I will say he hasn't played this in the best way because he had played g4. It allowed f5 and g5. So this is different than most positional Atomic games where normally white has some kind of advantage on the king side. In this position, okay, he still has some threats of bishop takes f5, and maybe we'll see that. I don't remember. But I really have probably a lot more time than normal to try to create something on the queen side. So I'm able to play pawn to a5. And here even pawn to c5 as well. Wow. Okay, what was my thought process here? Also, I vaguely remember I'm seeing, because I know that bishop takes f5 is an idea, I do, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I had briefly looked at this move with the computer after the game, and I think because I was curious if this was the right move, I didn't actually spend too much time on it, but I was curious, I was thinking I just wanted to get as much pressure as possible, but I knew bishop takes, in game, I knew bishop takes f5 was a threat, rolling this f pawn down the board, but I think I remember maybe bishop e4 was the move. I'm putting pressure on b7, and if it takes, it's really nice because now I'm the one that's wasted a tempo to do this, and also gotten rid of this knight, which was blocking this rook. So then after pawn to f5, I think black should just be completely lost here. So I think c5 actually loses to bishop e4, if I remember correctly, if it was this game that I was looking at, just this particular position. But objectively, it makes sense. I'm threatening to come to d4 if bishop e4 is not a tactic that he has. Really, it's quite hard to find other things to do. You know, say I go for a takes b4. It's a little unintuitive considering the rook, you know, is on the b file and not the a file. Maybe starting with pawn to b5, but okay, even pawn to b5. I was thinking bishop takes f5. And, I mean, his plan just seems a lot clearer. If pawn to d3, I honestly think he could just take, and I don't have any queen to b6 here. Even if we go back, even if I'd gone takes here, takes, queen b6, queen d4, maybe queen b2, knight d2, bishop c5. Yeah, this bishop c5 move, I think, is maybe what does it. Because rook b1, I mean, I can even just take, and this is probably fine, but I probably have better. So, okay, I'm trying to think of what I should have done instead of c5, because I think I remember c5 is a mistake. Yeah, maybe it is takes, because it maybe kind of stops us with d3 and queen b6 stuff. But he has potential. Like, I'm thinking he could also play... I guess he really needs to stop it. I mean, c3... I mean, even this pretty much allows queen b6, though, I think. Maybe not, though. Then there's f5, so maybe queen b6 isn't the move here. Also, bishop g7 hitting this. And yeah, I like this pawn here kind of blocking this queen. Okay, I'm not going to look at this too much longer. I'm trying to analyze this on the fly here. But regardless, I think c5 was a mistake. But it was kind of their idea. I think it loses tactically to bishop e4. But if there's no bishop e4 here, now if bishop takes f5, I don't know, it's still kind of hard, but I was just thinking trying to get as much activity as possible here. So f5 here takes... Now queen b6. No, obviously not. What was I thinking here? I guess I was maybe not calculating this too much and just thought I'm trying to scare him as much as possible here. But really, I'm curious to see bishop takes f5 as well, because that seems still pretty good. Maybe d3 is not the best move. Maybe it's something like bishop h6, f5, and castles or something like that. So maybe I shouldn't be too scared of bishop takes f5, but okay. Let's continue on here. Queen c7, hitting this pawn. I think this is all good. Okay, and then queen to a7. I really was a fan of this move. I spent quite a bit of time on this. I don't know what the computer thinks. But pretty much I obviously can't take here because there's queen d7 ideas. But after queen to a7, now this comes with a check. So now I kind of am threatening to take here. If it were my move, like say he goes h4, I think this is good. I probably want to take here. Or maybe I have bishop c5, crazy move after takes rook b2, knight d2. It's unclear. But after takes here, rook d8 here maybe. Oh no, never mind. Okay. Maybe it's still drawn. I don't know. It's tricky to figure that out. But regardless, queen a7 with the potential of taking here, and it comes with check, so it's not at least not immediately a checkmate. And he plays king h1, which makes a lot of sense. Here, I thought for a long time, and okay, I thought, and okay, now I'm remembering this was it's kind of embarrassing that I think I did go over this position as well with the computer. This is another position that I remember where in game I was considering bishop e7 or bishop a3, and ended up playing bishop a3, but I think the computer preferred bishop to e7. So I wish that I hadn't chosen this game, because I think I did actually go over this game a little bit afterwards. But I think the reason for bishop to e7 is that knight a3 doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, considering I could potentially just take, and if queen a4, rook to b5, I think. But really, I don't even have to take. I could just castle as well, and the knight isn't doing too much. And also knight to d2, not doing too much there as well. I could just castle, and it's not threatening to come anywhere from there. So really, this bishop is not a great piece. I mean, it's not really coming anywhere here, but it's still a better piece than this knight. So in game, I was thinking I didn't really want to put it on e7 because I was still considering bishop takes f5 stuff at some point, and f5 coming and taking on e6. But in reality, I guess it's just a stronger piece than this knight. And I mean, I guess bishop e7 castles in some future ideas of b takes, and then the rook would hit this knight here. So maybe I bailed him out slightly with bishop takes a3, but okay, from here on, I don't think I was able to analyze anymore, if I remember correctly. So I think we should be on our own from here. Okay, so then I play pawn to b4, which opens up bishop a6. So I've got to dodge with my bishop. And now it kind of turns into a game where we're trying to use our pawns to block the opponent. So obviously he can't take here because of queen to g1. He doesn't want to take here because of rook b2 takes, and probably something like rook 2, and maybe even d3 here. But I'm going to be the one that has some potential to get on here because these pieces aren't really, well, he's got to respond to this threat, and then I can come here, kind of trap his queen. So his best idea is to basically say, let me just push this pawn instead, try to block my queen off with c5. And okay, so yeah, we are just using our pawns here to block off the opponent's pieces. And at this point, the material is equal. Like if we were to trade everything off, he would be likely winning. Say all of these pieces and pawns. Well, I guess it's a bad example because the knight would have to trade itself off for one of these. But generally, like in an equal endgame, when it's a knight versus a pawn, depending on where the pawns are, the knight side can sometimes win because like it could come over here and attack this pawn, and then very quickly come here and take this pawn and roll this pawn down, and my king wouldn't be able to stop both, essentially. So I know that it's not really going to come down to that here because both of these pieces are on light squares, and I have a light squared bishop, so I've got a pretty strong advantage here to try to go for something like bishop to e4. I guess I can't do it right now, obviously, because then there's knight takes, and this pawn is still blocking my queen. But I know that these pieces are pretty much useless right now. Like in my mind, I'm thinking, how can I trade my queen off for either two pieces or really even a piece and a pawn here? Because if I can trade off my queen for like a piece and a pawn, it still becomes, I'll be up material. I can even, maybe take here and roll this pawn down. And it's with the position, especially with it being all locked up, like it's really hard for him to move. After I promote, he'd have to basically threaten mate. Otherwise, I'm going to be just coming here. So I know right now, my queen at least has some plans of trading itself off. Whereas his queen is really pretty much useless. And the nice thing is, my bishop can come in here. I absolutely don't want to play something like bishop here, allowing rook takes, or even bishop here, allowing rook takes. Even something like, it, say my bishop eventually got here for some reason, or here, not there, here, he could take here, and that would be perfectly fine for him in most positions. So I really don't want to give him a chance to take one of these pawns and explode one of my pieces in the process. I want to do that to him instead. It's one of these positions where our pawns are pretty far down the board, and they end up, these pawns, I mean, this pawn is really neutralizing this queen for the most part. This queen is not worth too much right now. Even if he played something like king h2, so after he moves his queen, I promote, there's no check. In this particular position, like coming to queen to b3 just is not going to do a whole lot. So he moves his knight. Maybe he was worried about rook takes d4 here, or maybe he just, I mean, knight b5 is also kind of a tempting move, putting pressure on the queen here. But now I play bishop to e4, and sadly for him, he can't take on a7, even though it seems really good. A knight and a bishop for a queen and a rook. That allows bishop takes. I guess I can just play it out here. That allows bishop takes b1, and the only way to stop this threat is rook to b3. You don't have time for queen to b1. I'm just going to promote, and you don't have any time to get active either. I can come here, and after something like this, yeah, he's just completely screwed one way or the other. No time for c6 either. Same thing, queen to b1, if c7, something like takes here and here. and he's completely screwed. So in this position, say that he were to take here, after he takes, he absolutely has to play rook to b3, and after I queen and takes, again, I definitely don't want to make the mistake of rook to d3, which is kind of the tempting move, you know, the rook lift, but that allows queen takes d2. So instead, okay, actually maybe I miscalculated because I was thinking rook to b8 and rook to b1, but that wouldn't work because of c7, and after takes he has c8. So instead, the only way to play for an advantage would be here, and I think it's a draw after h4. Or does he even have to go h4? No, he doesn't even have to go h4. I think this should just be a draw. Because he's gonna have his 4 squares here. Yeah, I don't see him winning this actually, so maybe he should have gone for this. Let's see, rook to b3. Do I have anything else? I think I've got a queen. I think this is just a draw. I'm going to flip on the computer real quick and make sure. Okay, yeah, this is a draw, which means this is a draw. Wow, so he could have gone knight takes a7. I was completely wrong. It's actually the only move to hold a draw here. Instead, he goes rook to d3. And here, I probably could have gone queen takes c5. I guess I'll look at it with the computer here in a second. I probably could have gone queen takes c5. For some reason, I played queen b6 first, and then after he moved his bishop, I'm not sure why I did that. And then, okay, I realized here at this point, I don't know why he played king f2, by the way. If I go bishop to f3, like let's say king h2, bishop f3, and takes, I can't win this endgame because there's actually no way to get my rooks in. The only chance I have is takes. But then I think he just perpetually moves this bishop. And I definitely can't do this because he just moves his king back and forth. And if I ever do try to come here, king h2, a4, h4, a3. Well, actually, doesn't even have to go h4. You could just go queen to c2. And, oh, wait, but the queen blocks. Wait, this is actually crazy. Wow, okay, I didn't consider that at all. So instead, okay, but he can still set this up correctly. Okay, so rook b4, he played king f2, but say he had gone king h2, takes, and he needs to keep the king here, because after h4, you know, again, if takes, it can easily be a draw, because as much as I attack his bishop, he's always going to have somewhere to move it. And if you ever go a4 takes, and this rook just can't get in, because these pawns are both hit, the rook can't move to any of these squares. This pawn is stopping the rook from coming over this way. And yeah, there's legitimately no way for black to win this endgame. If you ever trade the rook off, queen a4 and queen e8, that's the way to do it. So in this position, there's one that we had before. If takes, just keeping the king on these squares, because then after takes, it's very crucial that queen a4 is available. That's the key move. You don't want your king on this back rank while you play queen a4, and then you have queen e8 here. So that would actually be a draw. And I realized that after I played queen takes c5, I thought I was winning for a split second, but then I realized that this position should be a draw because he's hitting both of these pawns. I don't want to take this. Like, it's tempting to take this rook here, but I decided here, like, there's no reason to, because it's just simply going to be a draw if I go for that. Like, I guess maybe it requires a little bit of technique from him, if I take here, but not that much technique. So after king f2, it actually allows bishop to f3, which I think was probably the losing move here, because then I didn't have to get rid of my bishop anymore. Now this is a legitimate threat. Taking here, it would force captures for him, and then I could get my other rook in. So he had to move his queen, and then he had to trade his rook off, and then at this point, this endgame was completely winning for me. Okay, that is my analysis of the game. let me very quickly go over this game with the computer. I'll run the computer analysis and then also just go over the game like so. Okay, interesting. So queen h5. Yeah, I mean, I guess the computer often suggests this kind of stuff, but it's very rare that people actually go for it. But okay, that's one thing that he could have gone for if he wanted to. And then, yeah, I did think it was a little strange the way he played this opening. I'm surprised that it's saying I had such a big advantage, and it just wanted me to go straight for knight to c5. Takes. This is a really strange position. Okay, like this is something that I never would have found in game. Pawn to e5 here looks really risky. I mean, this is just not something I ever would have played. I guess it's taking advantage of the weird way that he's played this opening. But instead I went for a more natural looking f5, opening up the queen, blocking him. I didn't realize I was better, otherwise I probably would have gone for something like this. And again, it just wants knight to c5. Is there some tactic here I'm missing? I guess you're just going up material at some point here. Again, he's played this kind of strange. I went for the slower setup with rook to b8 followed by knight to c5, and I guess props to him for taking with the d-pawn. Like I said, if we got into a position like this, I think I would be better. Computer says I'm wrong. Computer says I should actually take here, which makes sense. Threats of queen a5 and rook b2. Some positions you would do that. Some positions it makes more sense to push the pawn all the way like so and just take some advantage like this. Okay, and there's this knight f1 idea that I was talking about that you would almost never see in atomic chess. But in this case, I think in this position, it's harder for black to create some attack. So a slow move like knight f1 is actually somewhat viable there. But okay, we see d takes. Bishop d3 was the best move. And then, yeah, this nice move of bishop to e4. A very nice tactic. After here, you just have pawn to f5. So very nice idea. Curious after bishop takes f5. The computer says it's equal, but you have to be careful listening to the computer here. There's only one move to hold equality, which is bishop to e7. And after pawn to f5, again, one move to hold equality, castles. After f6, again, one move to hold equality, bishop takes f6, king h2. And then, okay, at this point, it looks like you've probably stabilized. But this move would be kind of tempting. Yeah, so it looks like you can do a lot of things. That would be okay. But okay, that's 3 moves in a row that you have to find. I mean, I guess maybe it's not too hard to spot necessarily. But yeah, I was really looking at bishop takes f5 here. The computer does say b5 is okay. And really, okay, it's just allowing this. Yeah, I mean, this looks really scary for black. I guess this bishop b4 move is cutting off the knight quite a bit. What if you move the knight this way? Okay, yeah, so it's working for like some weird reasons. Basically, yeah, this bishop b4 move ends up being crucial. Say you go bishop a3 instead now here. Okay, and then you castle. Yeah, again, you just have to be accurate as black. So this move is why I would probably play something like this and just ask black to be accurate. But okay, we didn't end up seeing that. We saw takes. And then here's the position I was talking about. It preferred bishop to e7 instead of bishop to a3. But I went for bishop to a3, which I think is also... Oh, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Now I went for bishop to a3. Yeah, the computer also liked queen a7 when I played that. And, okay, yeah, like I said, we're just pushing our pawns. This all seems to make sense to the computer. And what I'm really curious about is this endgame here. So obviously this was a mistake. I should have gone for queen a6, which is really strange. Queen to b6. And the computer says black is winning, but I want it to prove it to me here. Do I have some way... Okay, I think it's because the rook is... Wait. Ah, yes. I can win because I can... Okay, so I can essentially force these rooks to be traded off for each other. And then play something like bishop to f3, I think. Wow, rook to d5. That's such a cool move. Okay, because I don't want to allow him to play something like bishop to f3 maybe. So rook to d5, that's such a cool move. And after takes, now something like this, queen b3, and as we saw before, after queen b8, queen d8. Yeah, even if he gains the tempo here, now I've got a bishop and a pawn for a rook, but sadly for him, the rook is on a light square. So really this opening, or this endgame rather, I just needed to make sure this bishop stays alive, because these pieces are really bad against the bishop there. Okay, that's really cool. So technically was winning even before king to f2, but king f2 made my job a lot easier. Alright, sorry for the long video. I didn't mean for it to take that long. I'm curious. It's still running the computer analysis, so I guess we won't get to find out for this video. But anyway, huge shout out to Chester for getting up to 24-20. It's ended up being a really close battle here on the road to 2500. And let me know what you guys think about this style of video. I ended up taking 35 minutes looking at one game. I didn't mean to do that. But yeah, I had a little bit of games recorded, but there was no commentary on them. So I thought maybe this would be a better way to just kind of go over what's going on in my head during these more complex positions. And so I hope it was helpful for you guys to walk through my thought process there. But yeah, we're now a week into the challenge and we've made some good progress, but we definitely have stagnated a little bit. We got within 4 points a few days back, and I'm hoping to get right back up to the top. So thank you guys all so much for watching and for supporting the channel. It really does mean a lot to me, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.